Hello everyone, welcome back to the TAPED podcast, the most drugged out podcast in the world. We are your hosts, myself, MickyT.
And me, Nostalgia.
And as always, we are not alone for the podcast. Today we have Charlise, aka CL Jesse.
Sorry.
We have Josh.
Hello, I do drugs, I think.
And making a grand comeback after a very long time, the one and only Louis.
I love heroin.
Louis.
So do I.
Louis.
And yeah, with that in mind, what are we back here for? We're going to be ranking every single album from Queens of the Stone Age. And I'm very excited to do this one because, in particular, Queens of the Stone Age are one of my favourite bands. And they have a short enough discography, so there's really just there's a fair enough to get through. So yeah, I'm excited to do this one, honestly. So
For
sure.
yeah, do you want to just start now then, or do you have anything else to say?
Bronze.
Nothing.
I can't talk.
Fair. So yeah, I think we'll just start right away. We'll just start off with our number 7 picks. What I think is the worst Queens of the Stone Age album is Villains.
I also chose Villains.
Funnily enough, guys, I don't know if you didn't expect this, but I chose Villains.
I chose the self-titled.
Whoa.
I also chose
sad.
Queens of the Stone Age.
I'm depressed.
Yeah, true.
Good.
I mean,
True.
not controversial. That's fine. That's perfect.
True, except I didn't pick that one.
Yeah, the worst is actually Songs for the Deaf. That one fucking sucks, bro.
I hate that.
And
album.
that's a wrap. See you guys next time.
All of their albums are at the last place.
Oh yeah. Rated R, worst album ever. Moving on.
Fuck Rated R.
Fuck Lullabies to Paralyze, honestly.
Rated
Fuck them all. This band sucked. All their albums suck.
Rather go
Anyway,
listen to Eagles of Death Metal. Alright, so yeah.
Fuck Queens of Stone Age. I love Muse.
True.
True, to be fair.
Yeah, they're comparable.
Yeah, anyways, Villains. Yeah, it's my opinion, Queens of the Stone Age's most recent album happens to be their worst, and it's a disappointing album, coming after Like Clockwork, but on its own, it's not a terrible album, it just suffers from sonic issues and a lack of consistency. And I've listened to this like 3 times in preparation, and, it has grown on me a little, but my main criticisms still stand. I think the direction that Queens go is pretty alright for this album. It goes from more groovy, kind of bluesy and dance tinge sound, and they get some pretty slick grooves, to be fair, and Josh Homme is pretty good vocally, and there are genuinely great moments of songwriting like on Fortress and Villains of Circumstance. But honestly, it just gets held back by the production and the often uninteresting song structures and riffs. Like, he brought on Mark Ronson to do some production for this album, and he does add that more commercial and accessible flair. But where it loses me is in a lot of the mixing. The production overall is consistently muddy, the soundscapes feel so confined, claustrophobic, and the drums just straight up sound like crap. Outside of the highlights, these songs are just very subpar. Some of the riffs are very plain, some of the songs aren't that interesting, they often feel run-of-the-mill, and some of my least favourite Queens of the Stone Age songs are on this album. So, yeah. Number 7.
Yeah, overall, Queens of the Stone Age are a very consistent band, but Villains is definitely one of their least consistent projects. But that's not to say there isn't some great moments on this thing. I think the 2 opening tracks are brilliant, and while Mark Ronson's production is usually not very good, it's probably the worst produced album. He does have moments where I think everything clicks, and the opening track especially is one of my favourite Queens of the Stone Age songs, period. But especially the latter end of this album is just really monotonous, really uninteresting. It just doesn't live up to any of their better material. It's a little bit of a slog to get through, especially considering it slows down near the end.
To be honest, I don't really have much to say about this album. It's incredibly flat, production-wise, and it has loads of boring, bloated tracks that make this album feel dry and lifeless. it's just not a worthy successor to Like Clockwork at all. If I was to describe how I feel every time I'm forced to listen to this album, in one word, it'd be disappointment. In another, it'd be disgraceful. That's just, I don't know. I just don't find this a fun album or enjoyable at all in comparison to any of their other albums.
For the self-titled, my reasoning for putting it, like, at the bottom is, while I do enjoy it, like, I don't think they have any bad albums. It's just, I find that this is them at their least refined. The songs drone on for too long. They haven't really found their sound yet. They don't really have that magic yet that's present on some of their follow-ups. And honestly, I don't really see much of a reason to listen to this over some of their other albums that are just substantially better, with better riffage and a more unique sound.
Yeah, for me, the first Queens of Stone Age album is a great album. Don't get me wrong, I don't think they have a bad album in their catalog. But for this album, it definitely sounds like a band in its infancy. And while the songs are very good, with particularly songs like Regular John and Avon and If Only, which Avon is just Nova spelled backwards because that was the demo, so that was always like confusing why they called that name, but especially If Only, I mean, I think that song is one of their best songs, and it definitely captures, I think that song in particular captures what they would go on to do, but then that's all I think about when I listen to this album is just what they would go on to do. It's a bit inconsistent in some of like the back half of the album, but it's still just a good old-fashioned stoner rock album, even though it literally sounds like they're only smoking weed on this album as opposed to other albums where they were doing all the drugs, which we'll get into later.
Nicotine is like it in...
I love drugs.
Fuck, I don't remember the other ones. Help.
Of course.
I'm
So yeah,
fired.
with that in mind, my favorite tracks from Villains are Feet Don't Fail Me, Fortress, Villains of Circumstance, and The Way You Used To. My least favorite tracks are Head Like a Haunted House, Unreborn Again, Hideaway, and The Evil Has Landed. Probably my least favorite Queens of the Stone Age song.
Good.
My favorite tracks on Villains were Feet Don't Fail Me, The Way You Used to Do, Fortress, Unreborn Again, and my least favorite track was Hideaway.
My favorite track, there is none. I don't like this album at all. All of them, I just don't like any of the tracks, dude. They're all bad.
I mean,
They all
fair
suck.
enough.
Negative Nancy, you are.
Shut up!
God, you're so mean, Louie.
Let me be mean.
I'm gonna
That's all he has
stuff
going
you in
for
a
him.
locker and take your lunch money.
Do it then.
Come on, dweeb. Punch. Okay.
This is quite rude. We need to get right on track.
Did you say your least favorite?
Yeah,
They're
all
all
of them.
Oh, okay. Alright, my favorites on the self-titled were Avon, If Only, Walking on the Sidewalk, How to Handle a Rope, and my least favorites were Hot Take, Mexicola, You Can't Quit Me Baby, and I Was a Teenage Hand Model.
Mexicola, really?
What the
Yeah,
fuck? That's like...
Hello? Like,
What?
Dude, that's like one
I
of their
can't
best
believe
songs.
it.
That's
gotta
like-
be
I
edgy.
think maybe my
It's CL
favorite.
Jesse on an episode, I have to be edgy.
True, to be fair. True, to be fair.
All right. My favorites on the Queen of Stone Age self-titled was Regular John, Avon, If Only, You Would Know, Mexicola, and You Can't Quit Me Baby. My least favorites are Hispanic Impressions and I Was a Teenage Hand Model. I'm not really sure why Teenage Hand Model was a single, but whatever. Go off, I guess.
It is what it is.
Mm.
Yeah, with that in mind, moving on to our number 6 picks, I chose Queens of the Stone Age.
I chose Air Vulgaris.
I also chose Queens of the Stone Age.
I'm sorry, Louie. I chose Lullabies to Paralyze.
Okay, so I'm leaving the podcast forever, guys. It was nice when it lasted, I guess, but I mean, I'm just done. I don't know. I can't take this shit anymore.
Jesus
These
Christ.
takes suck. You suck. You should feel bad.
I don't.
I knew this would happen. I knew this would happen.
Well, my number 6 pick is Villains.
I am
Alright.
so unique.
Alright.
Wait, Louis, you go after Mick, because he's had the same pick.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, Queens of the Stone Age's self-titled album is, it's actually a really good stoner rock album on its own, and as a whole, it's just a fun listen. But it doesn't really stand out as being the absolute best in the band's discography, and that's for a couple of reasons. To me, it just seems like Josh Homme was just trying to give Queens of the Stone Age its own niche at the time and find a direction for the band, since, his previous and pioneering band Caius ceased to exist. So it's kind of like a reboot for him, I'd say. In terms of production, self-titled isn't that refined or as blistering as some of the band's later stuff. It often feels somewhat sterile, and with some of the song structures and grooves specifically, the sound as a whole isn't really that special for a stoner rock album, and there's a couple of riffs on here that come off a little bit disjointed for me. Besides that, there's plenty to like about self-titled. I think Josh Homme vocally has some charisma and makes these tracks all the more catchy with his vocals. The riffs that are great on this album are truly great. Case in point, Mexicola. Some of the bass riffs especially are just killer. The production is still pretty heavy, and there's some great chunk in the bass and the guitar tones, and there's plenty of fun and catchy stoner rock tracks on this album. But it's fine. It's a good debut. It's good for what it is, but it's nowhere near Queens of the Stone Age's best.
The debut is like a fine starter album, I guess, overall, but definitely not their best album. Good riffs and driving bass lines make for an interesting listen, and the early signs of greatness kind of shine through, but it's kind of average in comparison to everything that would come after it, except Villains. Villains fucking sucks. It's not an album I generally come back to listen to, because other ones are definitely better, and I agree that, there's kind of, their sound is starting to come through, but it's very kind of immature, I guess you could say. But overall, it's okay. It's fine.
Oh,
Nostalgia?
Right.
Yeah,
Confused about the order. Okay,
Too much
I went
drugs.
with Air Vulgaris. And like Villains, this album just for me is incredibly inconsistent. It has some soaring highs, but there's tracks like Battery Acid, which is fucking awful. It's probably the band's worst song in my opinion. The mixing fucking sucks. The vocals suck. It's ear grating. But on the flip side, the track after that is Make It With You, which is one of the band's most colourful and fun tracks. And overall, I think the highs are definitely worth listening to this album for, but it's got some really unmemorable and boring lows, and songwriting wise, it's probably on par with Villains as the band's most lazy and unexciting album.
Do not have go. Do not collect 200. You are going directly to jail. Anyways, Lullabies to Paralyze. Here's the thing. I like this album, but I like it because in my notes, the first sentence I had written for this album was, Lullabies to Paralyze is the most Queens of the Stone Age album to ever Queens of the Stone Age. It is just them doing their sound. I like their sound a lot, so I enjoy the album, but they're just kind of doing the shtick that they had already been doing for years without really building upon it at all. And especially after, albums, not to spoil my list, but, Rated R or Songs for the Deaf, that just seems like such a weak follow-up.
You just pay me. I don't know. It's paying me.
Good. I want you to suffer.
This is what the podcast is for.
Yeah, exactly. My number 6 pick was Villains, and I mean, come on, guys. This is a fun album. I don't care what anybody says. It's a fun album that still has some signatures. It still has some signature sounds that the band is known for. It's just a really good time. There's not really a song I would skip. It's maybe some songs aren't as good as others, but it's still pretty fun, and I still enjoy listening to it. I think it's pretty consistent in what it was trying to do. Maybe not song wise, but at least the vibe it was going for. And even though some of the riffs maybe are simpler than what we're used to, I mean, some of them are still very effective. Like the Domesticated Animals riff with the rising riff, it sounds like it sounds like a creeping spider just like crawling across like the ground, and you're just like watching it, and it's really creepy. And I like that song. I like the vibe, and songs like Feet Don't Fail Me Now. I'm or not now. There's no now at the end, but it's just that song is just a really good song. It's one of their best songs too. That's the thing about all these albums, that there is a song on the album that's always worth listening to, no matter what album you're listening to, and that's definitely Feet Don't Fail Me. I know you don't agree, Louis, but that's just how I see it.
All right. My favorite tracks from Queens of the Stone Age are Regular John, If Only, Walking on the Sidewalks, How to Handle a Rope, Mexicola, You Can't Quit Me Baby, and Give the Mule What He Wants. My least favorite tracks are I Was a Teenage Hand Model, You Should Know, and Hispanic Impressions.
Yeah, my favourite songs on the debut album are probably Mexicola and Avon. Least favourite, probably Hispanic Impressions.
My favorite on Era Vulgaris were Sick Sick Sick, Into the Hollow, Make It With You, 3s and 7s. My least favorite tracks were Battery Acid and Run Pig Run.
My favorites on Lullabies to Paralyze were Medication, Little Sister, and Someone's in the Wolf, and my least favorites were This Lullaby and Skin on Skin.
The Skin on Skin
my favorite
is disgusting.
Pain.
I don't
Pain's
hate
like
it. Here's the thing.
agony.
I don't think I've ever heard a Queens of the Stone Age song that I think is legitimately bad. It's
Have you
just
heard Villains?
that
Hello?
song is definitely weaker in their catalog. Gotta say.
I disagree.
Oh,
I disagree heavily.
My favorites on Villains were Feet Don't Fail Me, The Way You Used to Do, Domesticated Animals, Fortress, The Evil Has Landed, and Villains of Circumstance. My least favorite was Head Like a Haunted House.
What is with this head
All
like
right.
a haunted house hate? I don't.
I'd rather listen to
For me,
Villains.
I don't support
okay,
it.
I'll explain my hate for. Or, no, I don't hate Head Like a Haunted House, but every single time, and this is my brain, this is totally my fault. I always get reminded of the Green Day's side project, Foxborough Hot Tubs, and it makes me upset.
Oh, actually, if it reminds you of that, that's fair. I take it back.
Yeah, it's
song's
literally
fucking-
just me. I know that the song is like
if you
is
have
pretty
to relive that, then yeah, that's valid.
right. That's just a
I
personal
just-
thing.
I just think the song is just straight up boring. Like, no other way around it.
I mean, it's not
Oh,
boring. The
okay.
riff is pretty memorable, but again, the riff is just a little too reminiscent of that like '60s swing that they were trying to do, and I'm just like, ugh, kill me.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, we're moving on to our number 5 picks, and this is where this is the point in my list where I think all of these albums are great.
Yeah.
So for my number
Yep.
5 pick, I'm
Ditto.
gonna go with Era Vulgaris.
I'm gonna go with Lullabies to Paralyze.
Fuck you. I'm gonna go there with Vulgaris.
I went with Welcome to Sky Valley. No, that's wrong.
True.
That's cheating.
Dang.
That's also very low.
No, it's Villains. Welcome to Sky Valley would be higher if we were including it. Don't worry.
To be fair, yeah.
My number 5 pick was also Lullabies to Paralyze.
Jesus, guys. Yikes.
I like the album.
Yeah,
I
well,
like all these
spoiling.
albums.
Wow, the blood's boiling.
Sure.
So-
Well, the lullaby. Everyone who picked lullabies go last, I guess.
All right.
Yeah, you are stuck.
Alright, wait.
All right, I'm going first. Yeah, I chose Era Vulgaris, and Era Vulgaris is probably the band's more out there and somewhat experimental releases, like one of their most experimental and out there releases. And as a whole, it's just a really fun album from the band, in my opinion. You know, what Queens of the Stone Age do on Era Vulgaris is take their signature eccentricity and like kooky atmosphere into a sound that feels like very mechanical in terms of its riffs and song structures, and it's pretty abrasive with its mixes on the guitars and the drums. And while I do think one track in particular suffers from like just awful mixing in general, the rest I don't mind actually. I think the production's like muddy style kind of lends well to this whole like weirder and abrasive nature. Some of the riffs on this album are pretty wonky, but most of them work. And once again, Josh Homme is just a riff machine, and you know, vocally, you know, he's great as well. I like that he's going for a more weird like approach with his inflections and his harmonies. You know, I will always love a Josh Homme harmony, so there's that. You know, the track list itself, it's pretty good. There's some great tracks on this album that are fun, wild, energetic, and I like the approach the band took, like, with these tracks. And some tracks, they're pretty forgettable, but it isn't short of highlights. I suppose it lands lower on my list, like, because I don't think the production is some of the band's best. Some of the highs aren't as consistently amazing as the ones on their best albums, and as a whole, there's just better and more consistent albums in the Queen's discography.
Very true. Yeah, I'll go next, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Vulgaris is a uniquely kind of raw album, full of harsh riffs and distortion that give it a different flavour from the rest of the releases. It has the atmospheric equivalent of sitting by a campfire in the California desert, whilst also sounding like the score of Mad Max at times. It does, however, lack an excitement midway through and isn't paced all that well, but it's still a great album nevertheless. Though, yeah, as Mick said, Battery Acid does exist, which brings the score down for me, like, a little bit, but not too much to, like, take it anywhere below number 5. So, yeah, Vulgaris, not too bad.
Wait, who's going?
Well, yeah, no, you go, and then
Okay.
we'll finish with Lullabies.
Villains. Is this album overproduced? Yes. Is it anywhere as good as some of their other work? Absolutely not. Do I give a shit? No. This album, like, I don't even know what it is about this one in particular, because I do have it pretty low on the list because it is a very flawed record. Like, I'm not gonna pretend like I don't understand why people don't like it. It's a very valid thing to dislike. It's just, it always puts me in a good mood with the sort of, like, high energy it has. It's a very fun listen, but it's, like, fun in a different way to something, like, rated R, if that makes sense. Like, I don't listen to it often, but it is definitely something that usually puts me in a good mood when I do listen to it.
I went with Lullabies to Paralyze, and, as Mick said, this is the point in my rankings where everything here is great. And, Songs for the Deaf was a very tough act to follow, and to Lullabies to Paralyze credit, it's a very good album, but it doesn't really live up to the standards that the band set for themselves. I definitely really appreciate the very catchy and melodic, yet very dark and atmospheric tone of this album, and it certainly has plenty of highlights, but honestly, it just kind of falls flat when compared to everything I have ranked higher up in my rankings. I will say, like, tracks like Little Sister or Medication or Everybody Knows That You're Insane are among the band's best, and still, as I said, this is a great album. It's just the band have made better stuff, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Lullabies to Paralyze, this is spooky Queens of the Stone Age. I mean, not to say that they don't have, like, sort of eerie vibes in other albums, but this album just reminds me of Halloween. Like, I feel like this would, like, be a perfect Halloween album. And this album, I will say, it's great. It's got some classic Queens songs on there, but the flow, I gotta be honest, the flow of this album is not as great as I would like it to be. It's the structure of the albums is kind of strange to me. So you'll have, like, really great songs in the album. There's great songs in every part of the album. It's not like a front-loaded album or like a back-loaded album. Like, Everybody Knows That You're Insane is probably one of their best songs, especially on that album. And you have songs towards the back half that are also really good. And, like, the singles are good and everything. But it's, I don't know. Something about this album is very strange to me, flow-wise. And, I mean, I know, Mickey, you might not like to hear this, but Skin on Skin is probably my least favorite Queens of the Stone Age song. That song is so strange.
Oh, come on.
It's slander. It's actually slander. Hello?
It's not a good track.
It's a sexy
It's a
song.
good track. What do you mean?
It's a song that's trying to be sexy, and it's so, like, gross. Like, this, like, I'm not, like, a prude or anything, but just, like, the song just doesn't work. Like, it just, I sound.
Works.
I mean,
Bro,
I think in the
Are you from
song's
the
defense,
1950s?
in the song's defense, I don't think it's trying to be sexy. I think it's more trying to be gross.
Yeah.
That's
Fair.
always
Well,
the
yeah,
vibe
fair.
I got.
Fair, but
Yeah,
it still doesn't. It still doesn't
like,
work
ooh.
in either front. Either way I look at it, it doesn't work. And yeah, I had to say it. I mean, still, it's a good album. It was also Mark Lanigan's last Queens of Stone Age album as a member of the band, so thank you for all your hard work, sir. What?
Yeah.
No, wait, I was trying to think, like, I think I got him confused with, like, a different member that got kicked out, so I was like, wait, am I thinking of the right person?
Oh, you might be thinking
you're
of Nick
thinking of-
Oliveri. He got kicked out. And
Yeah,
after Songs
yeah,
for the
no,
Deaf.
I didn't want to say something, I'm like, I don't think that's the right guy.
I think he
Mark-
got kicked out after Songs for the Deaf, didn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
They got kicked
Mark
out,
Lanigan-
like, close together.
Mark
You're
Lanigan
thinking about
was
the
a singer
drummer.
on the
You're thinking about-
other. Well, there's a lot of members that have been kicked out of the band, but Mark Lanigan was the third singer of the band. He was the one who does the vocals on songs, "Song for the Dead" and "In the Fade" and stuff like that. That's him.
Yeah.
Gone but not forgotten.
Yes.
So yeah, with that in mind, my favourite tracks from Era Vulgaris are 666, I'm Designer, 3s and 7s, Run Pig Run, Turning on the Screw, Make It With You, and Suture for Your Future. I hope I'm saying that right. And worst track, yeah, Battery Acid.
It's not hard choice, is it?
No, not at all.
My favourite tracks on Era Vulgaris were Turning on the Screw, Make It With You, Suture Up Your Future. Worst, of course, it's gotta be Battery Acid. It just sucks.
That song is fine, I don't get y'all.
Okay, yeah, okay. Battery Acid, good. Okay.
It's not, like, one of the best, but it's a fine song, like...
Simian brain.
That's ass.
It fits in
Arse.
the album, but I...
Arse.
This is what the
Irish
skin on
people.
skin hate gets.
Sounds like how
people.
Battery Acid tastes.
You would know.
delicious. Anyway.
Alright, Charlise, you
Are
were
we not
next?
doing
Oh,
it in
shit,
the
my
order
turn.
we presented?
Yeah, we are.
Oh shit, okay, yeah. My favorites are Feet Can't Fail Me, The Way You Used to Do Fortress, and I Will Stand Up For It, Head Like a Haunted House, and my least favorites are Hideaway and Villains of Circumstance.
My favorites on Lullabies were Medication, Everybody Knows That You're Insane, Tangled Up and Played, Little Sister, I Never Came, and The Blood Is Love. Worst tracks were You've Got a Killer Scene There, Man, and Skin on Skin.
Just stop, please. Don't worry,
My
Nick. We'll be able to...
favorites. My favorites on Lullabies of Paralyzed were Everybody Knows That You're Insane, Tangled Up in Plaid, Burn the Witch, In My Head, Little Sister, I Never Came, The Blood Is Love, and You've Got a Killer Scene There, Man. My least favorite is Skin on Skin and Broken Box.
Oh, fucking
Oh, I
hell.
actually...
Skin
Notes
on Skin
autocorrect
is getting
autocorrected
beaten
plaids to
death.
PLAYED, so I'm not brain dead. I promise.
It's good. It's all good.
Skin on Skin.
Okay, we're not talking about that song. Yeah, number 4. I chose Lullabies to Paralyze.
I chose Rated R.
I also chose
Whoa,
Radar.
that low?
Yep.
That
Yeah,
low?
Hello.
yeah, baby.
My number 4 was Like Clockwork.
That's that.
But from here on out, the list is all 8 and above, so don't worry. Well, I say that, it's like 1 8 and then 2 9s and a 10, but we'll get to that later.
Mickey, I have to preface this from here on out. All 9s,
Oh,
all
fuck's
9
sake.
and
Oh,
above.
fuck's sake. Oh,
Number
fuck's
four.
sake.
Number
Don't worry,
4 is
Mickey,
Like
I share the
Clockwork.
pain. We share the pain, Mick. It's
Sim.
okay.
It's a 9. It's a 9. Please don't hate me, Mickey. It's a great album.
I'm gonna have a fucking heart attack. Jesus Christ.
Haha, old people.
Come on, this is what I get. This is what I get for liking a Bruce Springsteen album. Come on.
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't even know that. Now I think less of you.
Ooga booga, I like Slayer.
Ooga booga, I listen to Blade. Ugh.
Listen, Slayer sucks.
I
dude.
do
Shut up.
not. I do not.
Good.
Do not slander me. No,
Good.
I listen to real intelligent rappers like Lil Darky.
Oh God. Okay,
And
we're not
Russ.
Real
doing this.
hip hop.
Intelligent, objective.
Intellectual music? Yes.
Hmm.
Okay.
All right, let's just get this underway. Yeah, I chose Lullabies to Paralyze. And it's a tough challenge to follow up an album like Songs for the Deaf, but in my opinion, Queens of the Stone Age did that with Lullabies to Paralyze, an album that I think is probably the band's most underappreciated. I like that this album takes a sort of different approach to Queens of the Stone Age's sound. They opted to make a record that feels somewhat dreamy in a sense, and something that feels more nocturnal. The whole sound palette on this album is quite dark. The song structures are a lot more drawn out, and its lyrics have a different focus to them while still having that characteristic of Queen's. Josh could have just made another Songs for the Deaf, but I'm glad he didn't, and I ended up really liking the direction he took the band on Lullabies. The production on this album, it's still great. I think Josh Homme's vocals are, once again, just great. Just some of his vocal lines on this album in particular are amazing, and I think the distortion suits his vocals. The sound of this album, it's quite versatile with some plain and simple stoner rock tunes alongside these sort of atmospheric, somewhat sludgy nocturnal tracks. And while I think it is a tad bit bloated, it has plenty of great and consistent highlights, some of which I would consider some of the best Queens of the Stone Age songs. And I remember putting this on a fair few times over the past week, and whenever I've just felt jaded and just felt like shit overall, this record honestly just relaxed me and just put me in a better mood. So I appreciate it on that level as well. So yeah, that's Lullabies to Paralyze.
Right, Louis, what did you pick?
Rated R.
All right, we'll go after. We'll do the normal order then. Yeah, I also went with Rated R, and Rated R sees the band expand out of their very very stoner desert rocky debut. It expands their horizons to a more eclectic and more diverse sound, and I think it's a sound that would go on to be a lot more refined on the album that followed especially. But still, tracks like Feel Good Hit of the Summer and Lost Art of Keeping a Secret are among the band's best. It's one of the most colourful and exciting albums in their discography. And again, it's just another case of doing a worst to best in a very consistent band and having to put a great album lower than it probably deserves. But, I just prefer some of their other albums again. This is still a brilliant record.
You're full of shit.
I'm not full of shit. I'm telling the truth.
As I said before, the top 5 albums for me are all 80 and above. So don't take this too seriously, Mick. Don't have a heart attack, my son. Rated R makes me want to take nicotine, volume, Vicodin, marijuana, ecstasy, and alcohol at the same time. Plus, the second album is the starting point from when they went from pretty great rock band to masters of stoner rock, in my opinion. Some of the best mixing the band has ever had, and Thundering Gryphs put this album on the map as one of their greatest. That's it.
Okay.
Nice and quick.
Nice and simple, nice and quick.
I scroll through
You chose Like Clockwork.
No, I got that. I just got distracted because I opened another server and I just saw an edit of the album cover for Jane Doe with corn on it, and I'm upset. But
I love corn.
anyway,
On the cob.
Like Clockwork is a great album, and something that I do really love about it is how I'd say it's probably their most atmospheric and most grand album that they've ever made. It's just, this is more just comes down to a taste thing, whereas when I listen to Queens of the Stone Age, I prefer something a little more punchy and high energy, hence why I put the albums above this one higher. But that's not to diss this album or say it's not great. You know.
Kinda.
Like Clockwork is a fantastic album. It's not just for Queens of the Stone Age, but just an album in general. The thing is I just prefer the albums that are above it. That's just how I feel, man.
Why you
But for this album, I'm definitely not. But this album was definitely a reinvention of that signature sound that they had been building upon since Rated R. And it pushed the band forward, but the album sort of feels like a victory lap and a celebration of the band. We got a bunch of guest appearances from not only just pretty popular artists back in the day, or at least around the time of that album, but there's also guest appearances from Queens of Stone Age alumni, like Dave Grohl on drums. We have Mark Lanigan and Nick Oliveri coming back to sing parts. and we have Trent Reznor and Elton John singing on Fairweather Friends, and we have Alex Turner doing backup on If I Had a Tail. Like, this album is just like really fun, and it just seems like a celebration of the entity that is Queens of the Stone Age. And it's very dense, it's dark, but it's also very catchy. Some songs don't not some songs, but the songs aren't as aggressive as some songs on previous albums, but it doesn't take away from the fact this album is amazing.
All right, fair. Just could have put it.
It's
up
great.
a spot higher.
It's great,
Basically,
Mickey.
it fucking sucks, and I hate it.
You could have put, you
The
Rated R
worst.
and Like Clockwork could have been in not in y'all's top 3, but like, yeah.
No.
Okay. Yeah, I
You're
think
very
the
upset.
best I am very upset.
I'm upset.
All right,
with you.
so best tracks on Lullabies to Paralyze are Everybody Knows That You're Insane, Skin on Skin, Tangled Up and Played, Burn the Witch, In My Head, Little Sister, Someone's in the Wolf, and The Blood Is Love. My least favorite tracks are This Lullaby and Broken Box.
Where am I? Oh yeah, Rated R. My favorite tracks. Tracks on Rated R were Feel Good Hit of the Summer, The Lost Art of Keeping a Secret, Leg of Lamb, Better Living Through Chemistry, In the Fade, and of course Feel Good Hit of the Summer Reprise. And my least favorite track was Quick and to the Pointless.
My favourite tracks off of Right There, Feel Good Hit in the Summer, Lost That, Better Living Through Chemistry, and Monsters in the Parasol. Worst Lightning song, probably, though it's hard to choose.
My favorites off of Like Clockwork were Keep Your Eyes Peeled, I Sat by the Ocean, The Vampire of Time and Memory, and Smooth Sailing. My least favorites were If I Had a Tail and Fairweather Friends. Death. Yes?
Yes.
My favorites on Like Clockwork were Keep Your Eyes Peeled, I Sat by the Ocean, The Vampire of Time and Memory, My God is the Sun, Fairweather Friends, Smooth Sailing, I Appear Missing in Like Clockwork. My least favorite was Collapsia, if I had to pick one. Though that song is pretty underrated, I will say. But I got to pick one.
Right. Yeah, we're in the top 3 now, and from this point on, everything I have here is a 9 and above. So, with that in mind, my number 3 pick is Rated R.
My number 3 pick is Like Clockwork.
My number 3 pick is also Like Clockwork.
Charlise?
Hello? She's dead? Death? Real death?
Josh, announce yours first.
Well, my number 3 pick is Air Vulgaris. I've been enduring the hate this entire time, and I'm just taking it like a man.
Mine's also Era Vulgaris.
All right.
Okay. Alright, I'll go first then. Yeah, Rated R. Queens of the Stone Age's sophomore album is easily one of the best bands in the... No, not one of the best bands, what am I saying? one of the best albums in the band's discography. It saw them improve massively upon what they explored in their debut, and as a whole, it just kicks fucking ass. Queens of the Stone Age really found their niche on this album and added a ton of personality to their stoner rock sound. Like, Josh Homme's charm and swagger was just kicked up tenfold. The humorous lyrics have plenty of personality to them. The guitar works and riffage are just so muscular and flashy on this album too. The track list on Rated R is pretty diverse and really versatile as well, with a fine balance between like plenty of moments, and there's moments that feel a little bit more low-key and zany, and there's also tracks that just take it to the extreme and are just straight up bangers. Josh Homme and co are just absolute riff machines on this album. There's just so many catchy, heavy and interesting riffs on this album. The catchy melodies add a ton to the songs as well, and Josh Homme vocally is just so great on this album. Man's vocals just never disappoint for me. And just not to mention, Nick Oliveri's screaming is just awesome, and the hooks are just killer for tracks like The Lost Art, Keeping a Secret, I Think I Lost My Headache, and of course Feel Good Hit of the Summer. And the production on this album as well is great. The sound is really energetic. The riffs and drums feel a lot more muscular. The more distorted tracks around the end sound so heavy without being overwhelming, and it just sounds so grimy and dirty while being great. I suppose there's only really one track that is a little underwhelming, but besides that, Rated R just kicks ass. It's got some of the band's best tracks on it, And when a lot of albums that, like, when it comes to a lot of albums that came out, like, in the 2000s or the early 2000s, there is no fucking with Rated R, in my opinion. It is automatically goated because it ends with an improvised horn section.
Yes.
Louis, did we both pick Like Clockwork?
Yes, we did.
Alright, I have goldfish memory. Don't mind me. Yeah, Like Clockwork
all the
just takes... yeah. Like Clockwork just for me ticks all of the boxes that a good Queens of the Stone Age album needs to tick. It's one of the best albums in their discography, even though it was released in between two of my least favourite Queens of the Stone Age albums. It's just one of the band's most diverse and one of the band's most elegant even albums. It just feels really calculated. It feels like really perfected. Everything is just turned up to the like max. It's explosive when it needs to be. It's subtle when it needs to be. I think it's just one of Josh Homme's I can't talk. It's one of Josh Homme's just finest works through and through. It just bleeds his charisma and his energy throughout. It definitely feels like his love child. It's it's one of the band's most consistent albums. It hasn't really got a weak moment. It's just again a case of me preferring albums that I've ranked higher up.
For me, Like Clockwork is the most emotionally present album in the band's collection, ditching some of the harsh guitars and mixing for a more clean, piano-driven atmospheric sound, while at the same time holding the same old classic lots of sound spliced in between. It's certainly a refreshing take on the band's style, and I think it suits them down to the ground. Having been hospitalized, bedridden for months, and severely depressed before recording, Homme shows some of his best, most personal lyricism and songwriting to date, turning the album into a sheer masterpiece.
Delivered that like a fucking school report. Nice job.
Oh yeah, yeah, research up in this bitch.
My number 3 pick is Air Vulgaris. This album is underrated as hell. For me, this album, my love for this album comes from the fact that it's just so noisy. It's so dirty and sludgy. It's like it's just such a fun listen, and it just pounds my ears away when I'm listening to it. Josh Homme saw the word era vulgaris, which is Latin for common era, and it sounded to him like it meant vulgar era, which I mean definitely. I mean, you can look at the music video for 666 Sick, and it's just like just other songs in this album just sound so dirty, and it's just so fun to listen to. Like 666 Sick in particular is probably top 3 Queens of the Stone Age songs for me personally. It's just, for me, this album is noise rock excellence, and it's their most experimental album to date for sure. I know that it put a lot of people off. It still does to this day. But I just think that this album is really good at crafting lyrics and other things. Like it's good at crafting a vibe that just makes you feel like you're covered in like some kind of dirt or film or something like that. And every song, well, almost every song has this soaring chorus that always brings the songs back home. I'm trying to sell this album to people who are turned off by it, if that didn't become clear, because I just think that this album is like very misunderstood, and even lyrically, I feel like this album is very interesting in a sense where the lyrics kind of delve into the dangers of the music industry, and from a perspective of a band like Queens of the Stone Age, it just feels like that for them, all the drugs that they were consuming to make the Rated R and Songs for the Deaf and Lullabies to Paralyze albums, they just started to bleed out and start to poison the well that was Queens of the Stone Age. And it's them. This is the album of them trying to discuss that and just overcome that as a band. And yeah, it turned a lot of people off, but I feel like if people give it a fair chance, it could surprise them, because it certainly surprised me. I didn't think I would ever say this album was as high up as it was, but it just, I don't know, it has a hold on me and it just never lets go.
Alright, Era Vulgaris. I'm going to be real. I genuinely like, for something like Villains, it's like, I understand why people don't like that album. Like, I get why someone wouldn't get that much out of it. For this album, I don't. Like, I genuinely don't. I think not only does it have that flair that some of their other albums have, where they've fully realized their sound, they know what they're about, they don't have the problem that the self-titled did, where they're just trying to figure themselves out as a band. It's not like Lullabies to Paralyze, where they're just doing the same thing. They're taking their sound and they're evolving it with... I wouldn't just straight up call it noise rock, but I certainly would say it is influenced by it, and I think that perfectly complements their sort of deserty sound. Not only that, but I am a person who, like, if you look at my album of the year page, you can tell I fucking adore, like, rough, crunchy production, and this album is filled to the brim with that. And I think, like, production-wise, like, this album is fantastic to me. And I'm going to be real, like, as I said earlier, while Battery Acid is not one of my favorites, I do not understand why y'all hate it so fucking much. Like, it's a fine song, and it fits
Sounds
the
like a
album.
mess.
And
Yeah, it's a
frankly, the
mess.
album is... Yeah, no, I disagree. I disagree. It's like Adam's Family. I disagree. Disagree. Alright,
Happy Gilmore.
now I'm done.
Alright, fine. Right, my favourite tracks from Rated R are Feel Good Hit of the Summer, The Lost Art of Keeping a Secret, Think I Lost My Headache, and Monsters in Parasol. My least favourite track is Lightning Song.
My favourite tracks on Like Clockwork were Keep Your Eyes Peeled, I Sat by the Ocean, If I Had a Tail, My God is the Sun, Fair Weather Friends, and I Appear Missing. My least favourite track is Smooth Sailing.
How the fuck?
What?
I mean, that's
How?
that's an L. That's an L.
I mean,
That's-
I still think it's a good track. I had to
Also, I would like, this is not directly related to Smooth Sailing, but I will say part of my love for it is it has one of my favorite music videos.
Yeah, the music video is
music video is
fucking brilliant.
lovely.
I
It,
love
like,
it.
embodies the feeling of being drunk. I love it.
Yeah. I want it's such a good video.
I look at a video for like the feeling of getting drunk when you can just get hammered. Either way, I guess. But my favorite songs on Like Clockwork are Vampire Time Memory, If I Had a Tail, and Smooth Sailing. Least favorite, difficult to pick, but put me at gunpoint, probably Calopsia. It's just not as good as the other ones, but it's still alright.
Oh, Ryan's gonna be mad.
Always big mad.
I'm mad.
You're
Good.
always mad, old man.
stay mad.
Stay mad.
Shut up, Hager.
My favorites on Era
American.
Vulgaris. My favorites on Era Vulgaris were Turn Down the Screw, Sick Sick Sick, I'm Designer, Into the Hollow, Misfit Love, Make It With You, Threes and Sevens, Suture Up Your Future, and Run Pig Run. My least favorites. And I don't want to be the guy to put Battery Acid as my least favorites, but it's there. But I will say it's not a bad song. I don't know why you guys hate it with a burning passion.
You guys
It's-
suck.
I mean,
You suck.
I get it.
Stop.
I get why people don't like it, but it's not like the worst thing ever.
I mean, I don't think it's the worst Queens of the Stone Age song, but I don't think it's good either.
It's pretty good.
Alright.
Yeah, teach their own.
My favorite
Yeah, her-
on Era
Oh,
Vulgaris
never mind, I
are-
forgot.
God, you're trying to skip the woman. I see how it is.
Yes, I'm a raging misogynist and I hate you.
True. Welcome back to the Chud podcast.
Sound like a true gamer.
Alright,
Jeez.
favorites. Turn It On the Screw, 666, Misfit Love, Suture Up Your Future. Least favorites are Into the Hollow and River in the Road.
Mickey, I can only
All
hope
right.
that sound clip doesn't come back to haunt you in the future.
I really hope it does. It's fucking hell, that was awful. Yeah, we're at the top two now. And this was so tough for me to choose because I love both of these albums so much. But just after multiple listens, I had to do this. My number 2 pick is Songs for the Deaf.
You're based as fuck. Jeez.
I think you chose wrong, but I mean, please
Okay,
go.
man. Hal? Go.
No one's gonna agree with me, but I'm happy enough. Being the contrarian, I chose Queens of the Stone Age, their debut.
You're
What?
bizarre.
Whoa, that is wow.
That's generous.
I mean,
Well,
I thought
You know,
I thought putting Era
I mean,
Vulgaris that high was strange,
yeah.
but damn.
Gee.
I mean, to be
This-
fair, I have met a lot of people that are just adamant Arrow Vulgaris defenders. Like, I've met people who say it's like their best album. Having the
Okay,
self-titled
okay.
that high.
That's a bit too far. That's a bit too far now.
Yeah, well, I don't agree with those people, obviously. I had it at 3, but like it is a little more fascinating to me to see someone have the self-titled that high.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
Ow, my finger.
I see. Given how we're all breaking the mold, well, my number 2 pick is Songs for the Deaf as well.
Beast!
Damn.
My number 2 pick is Rated R.
My number 2 pick is Rated X, the deluxe version. No, Rated R.
My
Alright,
number
wait,
2 is
Louis,
White
go
Pony.
after Mick. I'll go in the middle.
Okay.
Alright, yeah. Yeah. Songs for the Deaf. Queens of the Stone Age's third album. The album that I first listened to from them, courtesy of Louis. And an album that is basically like a huge contender for probably one of the best rock albums of the 2000s. And for good reason. This album is just incredible from front to back. You know, firstly, I think this is the best lineup that Queens of the Stone Age had. You know, we had Josh Homme, Nick Oliveri, Mark Lanigan, and of all people, fucking Dave Grohl of Nirvana and Foo Fighters fame, like on drums. And these musicians just bring out the absolute best in each other on this album, and it really shows with the tremendous quality of the instrumentation and the tight musicianship. Not to mention, this gets a bonus because fucking Dean Ween is on this album too.
Yes.
And, you know, production-wise, Songs for the Deaf is amazing. It's brilliant. It truly lives up to the title because this album, yeah, it's loud as fuck. It is a non-stop rager that gets kicked into overdrive from the album's opening riffs. You know, the sound of this thing is just so meaty and powerful. Every single sound on this album is just near perfection, and it is consistently great. In terms of performances, everybody is on their A game. The riffage on this thing is so good that it should be illegal. Some of these just riffs are just... Jeez, they have no right to be as good as they are. The melodies, the song structures, and the intensity are great throughout the album, and the drumming is insane. Dave Grohl is just an absolute animal on this album, and honestly, I think some of his best drumming is on this album in particular. And he's probably like... Honestly, just because of this album alone, like just Dave Grohl just ranks like really high as a drummer for me. You know, I love Josh Homme's vocal lines on this album once again. I really like Nick Oliveri's contributions to his tracks. In terms of his tracks, there's just every track is great. There's some great consistency with how amazing some of the songs on this album is, and some of the band's funnest, hard-hitting, and best tracks are on this album. I do feel like the second half of the album is a tad bit weaker than the first, but that doesn't take away from these tracks since they're all fantastic. Also, I just love the underlying concept of the album with the radio skits and the drive through the desert. The humor is there. I love how they poke fun at egotistical radio hosts and just radio media in general. And yeah, you know, Songs for the Deaf is okay. It's an okay album. It's pretty okay.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's alright, I guess. It's fine. So, Songs for the Deaf,
It's not remarkable.
harsh, abrasive, tenacious, you know, the pinnacle of stoner rock. Dave Grohl is a stand-up performer on this record, I have to say, and pulls off some of the most impressively cascading and speedy drumming of all time, which drives the album forward. Tremendously fast-paced. Having grown up listening to this album, it'll always have a place in my heart as a nostalgic throwback to car rides to go get shopping with my dad and headbanging the whole way there. Josh Homme just provides nothing but endlessly energetic guitar sections and fun lyricism for the entire 1 hour runtime, and I completely agree with Mickey. The radio skits really do make this album feel kind of special and different. I really fucking enjoy it, man. And it's loud as fuck, you're goddamn right.
Yeah.
I went with their debut, self-titled, and I really don't understand why everyone is hating on this album here. I figured it'd be high up in people's rankings. It is the 4th highest Queens of the Stone Age album on Rate Your Music, so I didn't think I'd be that much of a contrarian, but here I am. You know, a lot of people do kind of call this the proto-Caius album, and I can definitely see why. The band definitely does take a lot of influence from their previous form. And, you know, it is a project where I don't think the Queens of the Stone Age found here are the same band that, you know, you hear on albums like Songs for the Deaf or like clockwork. Later on in their discography, they would definitely develop the sound further. But what they have here, they're very just basic formula, very stoner rock heavy, very desert rock heavy. It just works so well. I think the vocals here are brilliant. I love how hazy and how melodic and hypnotic this album is. The guitar work kicks ass. I love Josh Homme's vocals. I love how they add a very dark and brooding atmosphere to this album. The mixing is kind of muddy, but to me it just adds to the atmosphere of this album. It's just through and through one of the most enjoyable albums the band has ever released. It's an absolute gem in my eyes, and it's one of the band's standout moments, even if it is not really as developed when it comes to influences and different ideas as their later project. The core sound that they present here is just incredible.
Did you mean to say post-Caius when you said proto-Caius?
I meant to say post-Caius, yes.
Yeah, no, I was like, oh yeah, I love how.
Yeah, I live in a alternate dimension where Queens of the Stone Age came first.
Right.
Yeah,
I definitely
Imagine,
meant
though.
to say post-Caius.
Caius
Imagine,
dropped
though.
famous album White Pony. You didn't know. Okay, whose turn is it?
Yours.
Oh, okay. Rated R is when I think like the band really found what sound they wanted to go for, and they really understood their identity as a band. And I think that shows with the very, like, they sound a lot more confident and charismatic on this album. There's more energy here. They feel more assured. And I also think, while I do think my number one is a better album overall, I think this album best captures the sort of desert aesthetic that they go for. As someone who lives in a desert, I find that I often I find myself throwing songs from this album on because it just perfectly fits the vibe that they were going for as a band, and it perfectly mirrors the environment, and I especially appreciate that as someone who has grown up in a place like Arizona. And also, hot take that literally no one is going to agree with, Quick and to the Pointless is like one of my favorite songs from them. I do not give a fuck. That song is so fun.
It is. I agree. It's so fun.
That song is
stupid, but
proto Millionaire.
It just gets stuck in my head all the time. I love it to death. Alright.
Yeah, it's catchy as
Yeah,
fuck too.
I mean, it is. It really is. Yeah, rated R. This album is amazing. I remember I had this album at a 10 for like 5 seconds whenever ago that was, but this is definitely the album that had the band finding who they were, and it even just apparent. It's very apparent from the beginning track, "Feel Good Hit of the Summer." I mean, you got the classic line, nicotine, Valium, Vicodin, marijuana, ecstasy, and alcohol. But Josh Homme wrote those lyrics as to not, because he actually didn't like the label of stoner rock because it felt like that it pigeonholed the band. And so this is the album where he showed everybody that they don't just smoke weed, they smoke every drug. Give them a drug, they smoke it.
We're big boys. We like the real drugs, like meth.
Right. And I mean that song alone just captures the whole vibe of what you're going to hear for the rest of the album. And it even has a guest appearance from Rob Halford from Judas Priest. Like, oh man, like what a cool feature.
Wait a minute. I missed that. What track?
Feel Good Hit of the Summer. He sings in the end.
Oh shit.
Dude.
Yeah.
He's
that.
going crazy. He's going crazy with Nick Oliveria during the streaming of that song. Yeah,
I had no fucking idea. Wow.
I mean,
do research.
Rob Halford.
fucking-
This album has the Rob Halford seal of approval.
Fucking Rob Halford. No fucking way.
Yeah, and again, it's
amazing.
like this album is just a trip from front to back. You have the hard hitting songs of Feel Good Hit of the Summer and Monster in the Parasol and Quick into the Pointless Intention Head, but then you have the completely drugged out Better Living Through Chemistry and In the Fade, and I Think I Lost My Headache. Like, oh my gosh, I've never done drugs before, but if I did drugs, if it didn't feel like what I Think I Lost My Headache makes me feel like, I would want my money back.
Who
Drug
needs sex when we
abuse.
have Queens of the Stone Age?
I love drugs.
But
We
yeah,
do not
this
promote any
album
substances.
is.
I
except for-
promote
yeah.
cocaine.
I
Yeah, Louis
promote
does, but we
methy.
don't.
Methy.
Methy.
But yeah, no, this album is just amazing. It's so close to being a 10 for me, but I don't think I could ever give it that crown. But don't take me and put it in number 2 as me undermining it. This album is a masterpiece.
All right. My favorite tracks from Songs for the Deaf are You Think I Ain't Worth a Dollar, But I Feel Like a Millionaire, No One Knows, First It Giveth, Song for the Dead, The Sky Is Falling, Six Shooter, and Go With the Flow. If I had to pick a least favorite track, this is tough, but if I had to pick one, I would say Another Love Song.
My favorite tracks on their debut were Avon, You Would Know, How to Handle a Rope, Mexicola, Walking on Sidewalks, and my favorite Queens of the Stone Age track, Regular John. I don't really have a least favorite. I guess I was a Teenage Handed Model if I had to pick, but I still kind of like that song. So
It's certainly
I
worth,
thought you said-
candidate for worst song name because it sucks. That song name sucks.
Fair.
also
thought-
fucking awful album cover.
Literally. I thought you said something else was your favorite Queens of the Stone Age song earlier.
I said, well, Mexicola and Regular John are up there. I
Like
said
Feel Good
Mexicola
hit the
was
summer
one.
reprise.
Oh no, it's not really. It's a fucking reprise.
Yeah.
10
no.
seconds long.
So you were taking the piss. Okay.
It's like a 30
10
second
seconds long.
interlude.
Thought you were taking the piss, honestly. I didn't think you were out for a second.
My favorite track is the real Song for the Deaf. You know, the one that's like a minute of silence. That one bangs.
I like Six Shooter.
The John Cage entry on the album.
Speaking of which, my favourite tracks on Songs for the Deaf, I'm not going to list them all because it's all of them except for Six Shooter and Another Love Song, probably. Like, it's just the weakest.
Understandable.
What was that? Are you
It's still good, but it's not the best.
alright? My favorites on Rated R were Feel Good Hit of the Summer, Lost Art of Keeping Secret, Better Living Through Chemistry, Monsters in the Parasol, Quick and to the Pointless, and Tension Head, and my least favorites, I'm excluding the reprise from this because why would I include that? Leg of Lamb, Lightning Song, and I Think I Lost My Headache.
Well, I think I lost my headache, really?
I'm sorry. Sorry, Dad.
You're not sorry.
Sorry,
Hearing
Dad.
you say that.
You're not sorry. You're not
Don't
sorry.
leave me again, Dad.
Oh, Jesus.
Anyways, Josh.
My favorite songs from Rated R were Feel Good Hit of the Summer, The Lost Art of Keeping a Secret, Leg of Lamb, Autopilot, Better Living Through Chemistry, Monsters in the Parasol, Quick and to the Pointless, In the Fade, Tension Head, and I Think I Lost My Headache, and my least favorite is Lightning Song.
All right. We're at our number
Give me
one
both,
spots. The peak of Queens of the Stone Age's discography. And in my opinion, Queens of the Stone Age's best album is Like Clockwork.
Standing ovation.
Thank you. Thank
I went with Soundtracks for the Blind.
Oh,
Yep,
Songs
good
for the
one.
Deaf.
Alright, mine kind of a hot take. My number one was actually their demo tape. Like that they first
Whoa.
released
Doesn't
before
count.
the subtitle.
Cheating.
That one's a
Holy
slapper,
shit.
bro.
Cheating.
No, it is. Sadly, I have to be boring and say Songs for the Deaf. I apologize.
My number one is.
oh, yeah, that's like.
Oh, did you? Oh, wait, did you? I thought you already went.
Yeah,
I
Louis
got-
never
I
went.
was gonna
No,
skip
save
vote.
Louis for last. Save Louis for last.
Yeah,
Save Louis for
okay,
last.
that-
Oh, okay. Well, my favorites is Songs for the Deaf.
Well, my number one
What?
best Quats album is Lullabies to Paralyze. Fuck you all.
I'm not shocked at all. I'm not shocked
Why?
at all.
But I don't
Well,
get
well-
it.
Sorry,
That's-
you think
Um,
it's a good song? I don't want to hear you.
We'll do Mick, Louis, and then normal order.
Oh, so I'm first.
Yeah.
So...
No, you're after Mick.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
You know,
all
get
right.
ahead of yourself.
Yeah, Like Clockwork is my favorite Queens of the Stone Age album. To me, it feels like the band, at their most realized, and the band at their best in terms of creativity and in terms of sonics. In terms of the production, like Clockwork is just fucking incredible. The mixes are so stellar. The large atmospheres are so great while holding on to their just veracity and dirt of their previous LPs. The sound of this album is a lot more just dramatic and grand than the previous LPs, but it just works so well with Queens of the Stone Age for me. Every sound of this album just feels so meticulous and well thought out. It's also quite a dreary album, but that doesn't mean that there isn't any just bangers on here. There's plenty, and they certainly slap hard. But the soundscape is just more large, somewhat slow burning, and just encapsulating. It's also their most collaborative album too. They've had guests before on previous albums, but I think this has had their best lineup of guests. Of course, they had musicians that were just pretty popular at the time, but it saw a return from Dave Grohl, and of course, it had Trent Reznor on it, and and Elton John. Some of these guests they just made they just added so much to their own tracks, and I just loved it. The drumming on this album is great. I love the versatile and dynamic sounds they explore, from some traditional just Queens of the Stone Age sounding tracks, some dramatic tracks with some piano-based tracks too. The guitar work, as expected, is brilliant. Love the tones on this album, and they still pack a lot of punch, from their previous albums. Josh Homme adapts to the kind of dramatic soundscape better than I would have expected him to. His vocals add so much to these tracks. I love how he matches them and just adds some a more emotive feel. And not to mention, this has some of his best songwriting in the entire Queens of the Stone Age discography, in my opinion. And as a whole, I think the album finds a nice balance between being gritty and dramatic, and it's truly an album to behold. It's honestly one of my favorite albums of the 2010s, and slowly it's becoming one of my favorite albums of all time. If I'm being honest, I love the shit out of this album, and yeah, it is my favorite Queens of the Stone Age album.
God, he's so based. God. Okay, well, a controversial pick. Lullabies Paralyzed is the best album Quatza has ever produced. It's just the truth, guys. I know you can't handle it, but it's just the truth. Another album they've created. And listen, I don't want to hear it. I don't just shush. No other album they've created has had a flow so magical as this. Each track is followed by a banger after banger with an eclectic mix of soft acoustic tracks and hardcore rock masterpieces. Some of the band's best tracks appear here, from the soothing This Lullaby to the absolutely insane, yes, pun is definitely intended, everybody knows that you're insane, and the woefully underrated Skin on Skin. Everything just mixes together so well that I find it hard to choose a song I like on here. In fact, I find it hard to just even describe how much I love this album. It's just too good.
This motherfucker probably thinks that Gore is the best Deftones album.
I think the no Deftone album is good because they all fucking suck.
Okay, fucking Irish bitch. Fucking.
Yeah, cry more. Come on.
It's okay, Charlise. You could just.
I'm gonna take your beer away so you die of alcohol withdrawal.
Try it.
Charlise, it's okay. He listens to Audio Slave. His opinion is invalidated.
Oh, that's fair.
Audio Slave, dude.
That's fair. Alright, who's going?
I'll go. I went with Songs for the Deaf. It's not an interesting pick, but it's just the best album. I couldn't justify putting anything else here. It's an incredible project, and I think it defines what the band is more than anything else they've ever released. It takes the stoner rock core of the band it takes the core. I cannot speak. It takes the stoner rock core. For some reason, every time I say stoner rock, I fucking mess up my words. I think that word's cursed for some reason. It takes the stoner rock core of the band and just stretches it so far that it becomes so much more. And, everything here ranges from twisted to vibrant. It's brooding, it's eclectic, it's exciting, and it's consistently the best material they've ever released. The guitar work is incredibly infectious. It's just insanely memorable. All the riffs are fantastic. And again, the drumming from Dave Grohl cannot be overlooked. I know Mick already talked about it in length, but dude fucking kills it here. It's so powerful, it's so punchy, it just adds so much to the music. And for me, this is always going to be the definitive Queens of the Stone Age album. It just does everything that makes a Queens of the Stone Age album great, and then some. It's a fantastic record.
Alright. I don't even know what to say about Song for the Deaf that hasn't already been said 1,000 times. The album's like a fucking 10. Every song is immaculately produced. Josh Homme's vocal performance is the most charismatic that it has ever been. The drumming and riffing is super on point. The bass riffs, even top rated R, which is impressive because that album has amazing bass lines. And as I think I summarized it best in my notes where I just said, it's the perfect, I want to go burn somebody's house down and then smash their car album. And not only that, but the opener is my favorite song for them. It's like, I'm not gonna go on for like 5 minutes giving y'all an explanation that you already have heard from a million other people, you know? Like,
Yeah, fair.
Well, maybe I will. We'll see. No, yeah, Songs for the Deaf. This album is on another level. This was the... I had lowered the score before, which I feel like such a fool for doing. But this technically was the second album ever that I gave a 10 first listen. Queens of the Stone Age not only managed to make the best driving album ever made, but one of, if not the best rock album ever made. This sprawling concept of people driving through the desert and going from city to city, changing the radio station and listening through this album is just so captivating. Millionaire is them at their best, and it perfectly starts the album off as that song is the equivalent of just buckling the listener into the car, driving 100 miles an hour, and from then on it just takes you on this journey through the desert. And it's just, I just imagine looking out of the window and witnessing what seems to be the end of the world just happening in front of my eyes as the album progresses. And everybody here is top notch. I know people are like, oh, Dave Grohl, I like you from Nirvana and I like you from Foo Fighters, but Dave Grohl is the GOAT because of this album in my eyes. His drumming is on another level on this album, and everybody has their chance to shine in terms of singing. You know, you got Mark Lanigan singing on Song for the Dead and Hanging Tree, and then Nick Oliveri on Millionaire and Six Shooter, and Josh Homme, literally on everything else. And they're all doing a fantastic job, and it all culminates into the final track, Song for the Dead. Well, the technical final track, Song for the Deaf, where all three of them are just making this cacophonous and loud and doom and gloom, basically end of the world type song with Song for the Deaf, and it's just such a trip. This album is amazing. It's in one of my top 10 favorite albums of all time. I can't say enough good things about it, but again, everybody's already heard it before. It's a masterpiece.
Motherfuckers actually listening to Foo Fighters.
Actually, it does remind me. I have to say this: Dave Grohl was always a better drummer than he was guitarist or singer. It's just the truth.
I agree. I heavily agree.
I don't think any sane person would disagree there.
I like the Foo Fighters. I like the way he sings, but he's just not as good as he's on drums. He's a monster on drums.
I agree.
Even the best Foo Fighter albums are the ones where he's also on drums.
Yeah, true. True.
True.
Yeah, I'm gonna be real. Aside from the Queens of the Stone Age stuff he's done, I don't really like anything Dave Grohl has done. I'm gonna be real.
I know you don't like Nirvana anyway.
Yeah, I'm
How do you not?
Very lukewarm on Nirvana, and I just straight up dislike Foo Fighters.
Please, there's gonna be a fight, please.
There's a Foo Fighters song I like, but aside from that, it's I don't.
Is it ever long? I'm just too based on it.
No, it's actually Nova, the demo from Queens of the Stone Age. Thank you.
No, please.
True.
So I can drink myself to death. Gee.
Okay.
Okay, fine. My favorite tracks from Clockwork. I love them all, but these are my absolute favorites. I Sat by the Ocean, The Vampire of Time and Memory, If I Had a Tail, My God is the Sun, Smooth Sailing, and my favourite Queens of the Stone Age song, I Appear Missing. I have no least favourite tracks.
Based. He's so fucking based.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you.
Okay, my favourites on Lullabies of Paradise is all of them. It's literally just all of them. None of them are bad. I don't hate a single one of these tracks. If you had to put me at gunpoint and say which is the best guy, I'd say Someone's in the Wolf, probably.
God, this is not easy. My favourite tracks on Songs for the Deaf are No One Knows, First to Giveth, Song for the Dead, The Sky is Falling, Go with the Flow, Gonna Leave You, Do It Again, God is in the Radio. My least favourites, I guess, are Six Shooter and Another Love Song, but even those tracks are pretty good, so I'm grasping at straws here.
Yeah, I agree.
My favorites on Songs for the Deaf are You Think I Ain't Worth a Dollar, But I Feel Like a Millionaire. Title's too long. No One Knows, First to Giveth, Song for the Dead. I'm gonna get weird looks. Six Shooter, Go with the Flow, and Songs for the Deaf. And my least, if you held me at gunpoint and told me to pick a least favorite, I guess I would say Another Love Song, but the album's a 10, so that doesn't mean much.
Yeah, I mean, every track is my favorite. I mean, I guess I could go down the line, but I mean, just look at the track listing. I don't have a least favorite. I mean, I guess if you made me pick, I'd say Another Love Song, but that song is still pretty fun and a nice jam.
I love how we all had that song in our least favorites to some capacity.
I mean, it's the weakest song on the album. Like, that, like most people.
I mean, it was hard to
pick.
pick.
Song good.
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter because that song is good still, and that album fucking rages. So there's that. So yeah, we did it. We ranked every Queens of the Stone Age album.
Oh my god!
This
I'm so
is
high right
amazing. Yeah, dude, same. I'm so fucking baked. Yeah, so I actually, this was really an interesting episode. I loved how fucking diverse our lists were in particular. Well, maybe not at the top half. Well, there were some spicy takes. Specifically, yeah, a few things that I may have been a bit upset about, but besides that, that was fun. I really enjoyed that.
Y'all need to be nicer to Air Vulgaris. That's what I learned today.
I like Air Vulgaris. Don't get me.
Like it more.
No,
Stop
I
Air
can't like it
Vulgaris
more because
today.
Like you have fucking Lullabies to Paralyze at the top. You were literally not even allowed to.
I like Battery Acid. The Battery Acid, a good song. Please just don't talk to me like.
Fucking Irish people. Fucking.
We're just not the same. We're just not the same. I am built different.
Wow, generalizing.
Leprechaun. Fucking.
Okay.
Lucky Charms looking ass.
Just to end the podcast off, a bit of flair, I think. Given there's been way too much agreeing with each other in this podcast, I think I'm just going to say a controversial thing right now. Okay, Human sucks. Fuck all of you. Goodbye.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty mid. Pretty mid.
Mid doesn't even come close.
I gave
Okay,
it a
Human's
5.
good.
Anyways, end it before we start a fight.
Alright, fine. Alright, thanks for watching today's episode of the Taped Podcast. Let us know who you agreed with. Let us know who you disagreed with.
You only agreed with me. No one else. Me!
Me!
No, my opinion is the only one that matters. So
Shut up, Ricky.
yeah, with okay then. Yeah, necessary links to everything will be in the description below. And with that in mind, my name's been MickyT.
I've been Nostalgia.
Heroin.
You're watching Disney Channel. Bum, 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 bum.
And yeah, we'll see ya.
I did not mean to.
Bye-bye.
open
Stop watching this podcast, please.